All right. Hello, hello. How's it going, everyone? Thank you for joining us for our first Brown Bag Luncheon series with the American Society of Civil Engineers. And today, our topic is about starting up your own engineering firm. We're gonna dive into one of the successful stories of entrepreneurs, CEOs, project managers, or project engineers around our Central Florida area. And I'm your host, William Suhaili. I'm a proud member, as you can see, the American Society of Civil Engineers. Joining me today, I'll put him up, is Larry Madrid. He is the proud founder of Madrid Engineering Group, which he started about 27 years ago. And today, he is the lead board directors of Madrid and CPWG Engineering Group, which employs 100 plus engineering professionals around the industry, 10 plus offices around Florida area, and many other offices. How's it going, Larry? I'm really glad to have you here.
Hey, William. I'm so glad to do this with you and some of the other members of ASCE. Small little fact: I actually became a member of ASCE when I was in college, so been a member for a long time.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome. I would have kicked you out if you didn't know an ASC member. I'm just
You're
kidding.
tough.
I'm just kidding. But anyway, so today, our main topic is basically to answer some of the most frequently asked questions about entrepreneurship. Whether is it true that entrepreneurs are made, or are they born with it? Are there the geniuses of the industry or the society? Like if you talk about people like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, they kind of left the whole college kind of thing, and then they already know for sure when they're little that they want to become an entrepreneur. So we're gonna dig it onto that on the end of the session, and then we're gonna kind of brief through what's your experience and journey and all kind of that. So with that said, Larry, you wanna tell us a little bit about who you are, how's your family, maybe you have a entrepreneurship background in your family and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I sure can do that. I'm originally from Colorado.
Okay.
I grew up in kind of a lower middle class family. I wouldn't say that we were poor, but sometimes we had trouble paying that electric bill and things like that.
Okay.
Nobody had gone to college before my generation. My brother went to Colorado State University, and I followed him there later on. And I'm the first person in my family to go into engineering. I stayed
Wow.
at
Okay.
ESU for my bachelor's in civil engineering, and then I got my master's degree in the geotechnical engineering program in 1984, which is probably way before all of your listeners are used to even thinking about that time.
And mine was eight
But
years old at that time.
yeah, so anyways, that's how it kind of all started for me. Sometimes people ask me, when did I first start getting interested in engineering?
Uh-huh.
Uh, I was I was asked to do a term paper
Mm-hmm.
in eighth grade. I think it was eighth grade or ninth grade in my civics class, and they said choose a career and then do a study on it and then write a term paper. It was my first term paper,
Wow.
and
Okay.
I went into the library and I found a list of these career paths, these job opportunities, and they were ranked by the ones with the highest salary. And so
Okay.
up at the top was doctors and lawyers and nuclear physicists.
Engineers and all that. Okay.
I was like, I'm not going to be a nuclear scientist. I'm not that smart. But up near the top was a civil engineer, and it said, designs infrastructure for uh, roads and bridges and municipalities. And uh, I thought, wouldn't it be great to design a city? That would be really cool.
That is
And
cool.
so,
Yeah.
well, I later found out that that's planners. Planners
Yep.
actually plan it, and then engineers do the detail work
The
of
details
the
and all that.
infrastructure.
And there's many
Like
more other
I
in
didn't really
between.
know what the word infrastructure meant at that time, but that got me excited about it, and that was in like ninth grade. And
Wow. Okay. So you were.
but when I was in high school, my counselor actually said, you've got good grades in your math and your science. You might want to consider engineering. And I said, I already am.
That's amazing. I like that passion, Larry. Wow. Okay. So tell me a little bit about this, Larry. Were you, one of those people, valedictorian, or like the top of the grades and all that, or were you How were you in high school? Were you?
So in high school, I was in the honor society, but just barely. And like I was in that top 10%
Uh-huh.
of the students, and I was an A B student in high school,
Uh-huh.
and I went to college, and I was very intent on keeping that, but it was a lot harder. It was difficult for me.
Okay.
Um, we had this discussion earlier that
Yep.
I think that there's two different kinds of engineers. There's the ones that they just it comes easy to them; they
Mm-hmm.
just get it, and then there's the rest of us that have to work pretty hard to sort of figure things out. And there's a lot of tenacity involved in becoming a civil engineer. And I think that was me.
Mm-hmm.
So in college, I was kind of A's, B's, and C's. And I worked as hard as I could to get above that, but I ended up with kind of like a B average.
Okay.
It turned out that you needed a B average or higher to get into the master's program.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I kind of barely made it into the master's program from that standpoint.
So I like to hear that. I mean, that a lot of our listeners are probably mostly civil engineers, right? I mean, they're probably still working on their daily job, and just to hear the fact that you are just like any one of us. I mean, that's really cool to hear. And so I
I
guess
certainly wasn't at the top of the class.
that's maybe that's assuring for one of us who want to start their own company and they're not, on the top of the class, get all the scholarship you can probably imagine, checklist every single one of them and that. Okay, that's good here. So Larry, when you were in college, did you have this mindset of, starting up your own business and stuff like that? Did you know like, hey, one day I'm gonna venture out, I'm gonna start my own
Yeah,
business.
that it never crossed my mind, William. I mean,
Wow, okay.
I had no inkling of that, but I think I did come from an entrepreneurial family. My
Yeah,
father was a barber,
okay.
and he had his own barber shop, so he
There
was
you go.
his own boss.
Mm-hmm.
And then my older brother, after he graduated, he worked in the forestry service for a few years, but then he started his own construction company. So he became his own boss.
Okay.
And it was never a big company. He still runs it, actually. And he's called a flat work specialist. That
Mm-hmm.
means sidewalks and driveways and floors. Um, and then my younger brother is a professional musician in Arizona,
Wow,
and
okay. What a mix.
he's actually the lead singer in an Eagles tribute band. He's tremendously talented, plays guitar,
Nice, nice.
harmonica, blues harmonica,
Uh-huh.
and sing really well.
Mm-hmm.
And but he's essentially self-employed because of that. So I guess there was an independent streak in the family,
Mm-hmm.
and I got a little bit of that too.
Okay, so let me correct this, right? So your dad is an entrepreneur, right? They do something in construction. Your brother's doing music and stuff like that. I mean, that's really cool. So how did that lead to your path, to doing engineering and finally getting your first job in engineering, Larry?
Okay, so when I graduated from college, there was kind of a downturn in the economy,
Uh-huh.
uh, and I couldn't get a job in Colorado. Nobody was hiring.
Wow, okay.
And I had submitted letters saying, "You should hire me. I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread." I was trying to
I like
impress a few
that.
people,
Uh-huh.
and one of the letters got forwarded to Florida. They had this company had a Florida office, and they also had a Denver office. Just for a brief amount of time, they
Okay.
were trying to do consulting for mining
Mm-hmm.
in Colorado, which there is a lot of minerals mining in Colorado. And then in Florida, they were specialists in phosphate mining.
Okay.
I didn't know that they had already closed down the office because of that economic downturn. But the federal government forwarded that letter to their office in Lakeland, Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and they were just getting involved in the largest project in their company's history,
Mm-hmm.
which was called the Lakeland Circumferential Route.
Okay.
That road later became the Polk Parkway,
Oh, look at you.
and
You're doing that all the way today, right? I mean, that's like
yeah,
your
I,
bread and butter.
Actually a lot of work on the Polk Parkway over my career.
Uh-huh.
I was the geotechnical engineer designer of record for Section
Wow.
2 of the Parkway,
Mm-hmm.
and did some consulting on several of the other sections that were going on, because I had worked on the preliminary alignment and evaluation of it when it was a county project, and called the circumferential route, which nobody could pronounce.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. All right, so I guess young Larry moved down to Lakeland, Florida, because there's no jobs in Denver, Colorado, obviously. You want to tell me a little bit about like how which company were you working at? Like how's your process? Were you when you move with that company? Now, did you know that, oh my God, I don't like working for someone else. I want to work for someone else. And how are you progressing to your career, and how long were you there?
Yeah, actually, it was probably the opposite of that. I loved working for this
This
company.
is
The company was
interesting.
called
Okay.
Bromwell. The company was called Bromwell and Carrier,
Uh-huh.
and later they became known as BCI Engineers and Scientists.
Okay.
And that company got bought out by AMEC Foster Wheeler, and
Oh,
that
okay.
company is now something else.
Uh-huh.
So the company has continued on in other names, but when I started, the top two people in the company were Dr. Les Bromwell and Dr. David Carrier,
Wow.
and
Okay.
both of these guys were PhDs from MIT.
Yeah.
And so the privilege as a young engineer to work for some really, really smart industry leaders
Mm-hmm.
was something that I thought everybody had this, that was their career. But
I'm
really, over
jealous
the
now.
years, I have found out that over the years that this was a very unusual situation, and I
Agree.
landed in the middle of a place where there was a lot of innovation.
Mm-hmm.
We actually did a lot of research projects for the Florida Institute of Phosphate Research,
Mm-hmm.
and the Research Institute was, they were interested in solving some of the geotechnical problems associated with phosphate mining,
Okay.
which are big problems. Okay, big challenges that were needed. And so I would go out and sample a clay settling area, and in a boat, with a piston tube sampler,
Okay.
and riding over a sea of clay that was a mile by a mile and 30 or 40
Wow.
feet thick,
Okay.
of very, very soft clay,
Mm-hmm.
and then sampling using a piston tube sampler. I would come back literally covered from head to toe with clay, and because it was a messy job,
Wow.
and
Okay.
I got the moniker of the slime prince of Florida
Uh-huh.
when I was doing that work, because it was so messy.
Okay. All right. So
So,
so so
but
let me claim this fact then. So you were doing the grunt work early in your career, right? You're not
oh,
like went straight up. Okay, later you got promoted. First year you get project manager, you become senior project manager, and then you become the vice president and all that. So you
that
started.
didn't happen.
Okay.
Not that fast, but because it
Okay.
was a small company and it was growing,
Mm-hmm.
every 2 years I got kind of a major promotion. So I went from
Okay.
staff engineer to a senior engineer when I got my PE.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became a project manager, and then I was vice president of, or excuse me, not vice president. I was geotechnical engineering department head. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
as geotechnical department head, I had about 10 people underneath me that were
That's amazing.
directly underneath me.
Uh huh.
But we were by that time, the actual Polk Parkway, excuse me, the actual
Bless
Polk
you.
Parkway had started, and we were doing section 2 of the Parkway. So it was actually very multidisciplinary.
Mm-hmm.
I had some environmental people reporting to me because we were doing some environmental stuff. We were doing all of the geotechnical stuff.
Yeah.
I had the drillers reporting to me, the lab test technicians, and so on and so forth. So because it was a small company, I got a lot of responsibility thrown on me
Okay.
early on in my career.
Uh huh.
So by the time I'm 32 years old, I've been the geotechnical department head for a couple of years,
Wow.
and
Okay.
and 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 I was looking at the glass ceiling at that company, because my boss was a vice president, his boss
Okay.
was the president, His
Uh-huh.
boss was the CEO, and
It's
they were the founders of the company. They weren't going to go anywhere,
they're
you
not gonna go
know.
anywhere. Yeah, yeah,
So
okay.
I didn't see an opportunity for me to go up and become a vice president or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that
Yeah,
unless
yeah,
my boss were to leave,
yeah. That's true.
and I
And
didn't
he.
want him to leave. I really learned a lot from him as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to look around at what were my options,
Mm-hmm.
and I said I can either go back to Colorado, which is kind of what I wanted to do at the time.
There you go. That's your hometown. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go back to the home state
Mm-hmm.
and be successful there and be
There you
close to
go.
my family.
Uh-huh.
So I looked for a job back in Colorado, and I had two opportunities. One was with the EPA as a regional enforcement officer,
Mm-hmm.
and when they interviewed me, they realized I had just gotten my PE a few years before, and I really didn't have the experience for that level
Mm.
of work. Because when they say regional enforcement officer,
Uh-huh.
it was like Colorado, Wyoming,
Holy
Utah,
crap! So it's
Nevada.
that's a
It
big
was
deal.
huge.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, it would have
Okay.
been. So I wasn't really qualified for it. So we kind of shut down that one.
Mm-hmm.
I was also interviewed by an international and national geotechnical company called Dames and Moore,
Okay.
and they that would have been a sweet deal because they had an office. They
Uh-huh.
had an office that was a high rise in Denver, and the window of my office would have looked out over the Rocky Mountains and the city of Denver. It would have been spectacular.
Man, that's like
But they
everyone's
had a
dream. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had a hiring freeze though.
Mm.
After I got there for the interview, they said we're so sorry. We'd love to hire you, but we're having a hiring freeze that is company wide, and we're not allowed to hire you right now.
Mm.
So I came back and I kind of said, I think God is closing the doors for me in Colorado, so I should do the best that I can
Mm-hmm.
in Florida. So what are my options? So I did interview with PSI and
Okay.
another company called Law Engineering,
Okay. So
and
several geotechnical
and
firms.
and both of them wanted to hire me,
Mm-hmm.
but I was also thinking about starting my own company then,
Okay. So
and
this is kind of the
that was
start.
one of the options, right?
Okay.
If I was honest with myself, that was one of the options. And what happened was once I started to think about it, I couldn't get it out of my mind. I was like,
Okay.
uh, and if I don't do that, I'll never know whether I could have been successful.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of my thinking
Okay.
at the time, and I just finally I told my wife I think I have to do this
Wow.
for myself to know if I can be successful at running a company.
I like that mindset, Larry. We talked about it previously, but a lot of the people that are really successful knows at the time that they're gonna fail, and accepting that failures is part of being successful itself. And a lot of people that fail actually never fail in life because they're too scared of failing. And I really like that mindset, especially early on in life. And so let me sum this up a little bit. So you were about 32 years old, right? You have about 8 years of experience in life, and you're probably at the pinnacle or at the top of your industry doing geotechnical with your firm and stuff like that. You're probably making almost six figures during that time, right? And now you wanted to start on your own, with such a young, I guess, figure. And I guess what in the world were you thinking? Was it how do you know you're so sure that you can start this venture?
Well, I don't think anybody really knows for sure that it's going to be successful
Uh huh.
when they start. There are so many things that can affect your ability to run a company that are kind of even beyond your control. I mean,
I agree.
nobody could have predicted a year ago that we would have a worldwide pandemic and that would rock the financial world,
Mm-hmm.
and the health of hundreds of thousands and millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
So there's things that are going to happen beyond your control. What you have to do is be confident in your own ability to make things happen. So for me, my rationale was I've been a manager of people, so
Okay. So you know how to
running
deal with
running
people.
a company running a company is kind of like that. I had managed my department,
Mm-hmm.
um, but more than that, I had managed projects, and I had managed the projects successfully, so that we had a profit at the end of the day.
Okay.
And my reasoning was, if I can do a series of projects
Hmm.
and make them successful, that's not that much different from running a department as to running my own company. And so
I agree.
I felt confident enough that I could do that. Now, I would caution some of the listeners that it's a lot more complicated than that, running a
Heck yeah.
business.
100%.
Um, I had to, I mean, right off the bat, I had to get an attorney involved to make sure that the paperwork was good to start the business.
Okay.
And I had to get a financial guy to make sure that I wasn't doing anything against the law for taxes and things like that.
Hmm.
You have to involve professionals like a CPA and an attorney
Hmm.
to help you with running a company. But only the really big companies actually hire them in house
Yeah.
and have them as part of the staff. So you use them as needed, but be prepared that there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be things that you could not have anticipated, and I think a certain amount of resiliency and rolling with the flow,
Okay. Okay.
that type of thing is needed to be an entrepreneur these days.
No, yeah, I agree because a lot of us, maybe some half of us are still engineers, right? Completing a project as an engineer is one thing, right? Winning a project as a project manager is a whole different world, right? And then
Yeah,
getting paid to do the project that you've done is a different world, right? So sometimes there's other parts that you may never know, and it's really good that you brought it up, on stuff like that, maybe in cash flow and getting paid and stuff like that. And so, how was it on your first day when you started the company? Was it, how did it go? Did you find a place to stay? Did you work in your own house? Did you get paid? How did it go?
yeah. So I had a friend that was had his own construction company,
Okay.
and his construction company actually did environmental permitting
Okay.
as well.
Mhm.
So he was working with a client that was developing a borrow pit, and if he said I can permit the environmental part, the bugs and the bunnies part. That's what
Mhm.
he called it.
Okay.
But he said I can't design the borrow pit. I need somebody with geotechnical experience to help me. So
Ah.
I can put you on my project,
Mhm.
and that would be a good way for you to start
Okay.
if you think you can get the permit for us to do this borrow pit. So we went out and did a geotechnical investigation. I hired the drilling crews because I didn't own my own drill
Yeah,
rig.
those are expensive. Mhm.
Right, very.
Very expensive.
and
Mhm.
uh, and so I did buy. This is funny. I've forgotten about this. I bought a I bought a pizza oven to dry the soil samples to get moisture content. Had a little tiny pizza oven that was the first oven. It certainly didn't meet DOT
Is that
regulations at the
OSHA
time.
certified as well too?
Yeah, but but it was an oven, and it wasn't my wife's oven. It wasn't in the kitchen because
There you
that
go. I
wasn't
mean,
going
it
to happen.
works, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the beautiful thing that happened, William, and I would say there have been a few of these things that have happened that some people might say that's luck. I'm a believer, and
Hmm.
I think it's the hand of God working in my life
That's
that's
awesome.
been
Okay.
protecting me.
Hmm.
And so other people may not agree with that, but that's the way I see it.
Okay.
The
That's
first
amazing.
client that I had was a doctor's group, and they were building this permit,
Uh huh.
this ball pit.
Uh huh.
And then the second one was with that other guy, and he that was for a roadway project.
Okay.
So the first two projects were essentially borrow pits, and those are pretty good sized projects. So number one, I had a pretty good sized project to sink my teeth into.
Hmm.
It was going to last for several months, and then the client, though, they didn't realize that in engineering firm, sometimes you submit your invoice and you don't get paid for 2, 3 months, sometimes even longer than that.
Not at all. I mean,
So
sometimes we get it, after half a year or even a year. So it's
yes, I have a few of those late payers right now.
right. I mean,
But the doctor's group, I would submit my bill to them. I would fax it to them. Those were in the days when we'd fax things. I would fax it in the morning,
I've never
and
even
I would
seen
get
one.
a
I'm just kidding.
call. I would get a phone call in the afternoon
Uh-huh.
from the doctor saying, "I have your bill. I'm sorry I can't pay it today. I'll pay it tomorrow. You want us to have somebody drop it off by your office?" I
Wow.
mean,
Okay.
I was stunned, and
That's
I'm
unheard
like,
of. I mean, there's some of them, but
"Thank
yeah.
you, Lord."
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. So
Yeah,
that leads me to another question that I was going to ask, right? I mean, you probably have families during that time when you were doing this, right? I mean, you say you have a couple kids, right? I mean, you have 3 kids, and so you were about 32, and then you used to make this high figure salary, and one of the worst thing that could happen when you start your own firm, I guess it happens to a lot of my colleagues, is they're not getting paid, or they can't even pay themselves for the very first year of them starting their journey. So was that the case for you? Did you have anything prepared? Do you have like cash reserve maybe from your job to sustain for the first year of not getting paid, or is it?
yeah. I, I was so naive, and I think that's part of the thing.
Uh huh.
If you don't know to be afraid,
Uh
you're
huh.
not afraid, right?
That's true. I
And
mean, that's you're just afraid of what you know of, right? That's.
that was me. I didn't know to be worried enough about this stuff. My wife was deathly scared of this move. She was really, really scared. She's like, "You've got 3 little boys. I think they were like
Wow.
4, 3, and 18 months or
Uh huh.
something like that when I started the company."
Uh huh.
And she's like, and I need
Dang.
food. I need food on the table too. So
Babies
if
need
this
milk. They
doesn't
need
work,
diapers. Okay.
yeah, she's like, if this doesn't work and we go backwards big time,
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen? And I said, well, if it doesn't work, I'm still an engineer. I have a master's degree. I have a professional engineering license.
Okay.
I'll get hired by somebody. And I
There you
had
go.
turned down a couple of jobs,
Wow.
so I
Okay.
knew that the market was hot enough that I could get a job.
Okay.
So I promised her that,
Mm-hmm.
and I prayed a lot before I started. And I really felt strongly that this was the thing that I needed to do,
Mm-hmm.
um, and to start my own company.
Mm-hmm.
And I did have some money
Mm-hmm.
set aside for this,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have very much.
Okay.
You'd be surprised. It was less than $10,000 cash available, and
Wow. Okay.
the reason that I started with less than $10,000, I did have a credit card, and I knew that I'd read enough that people would put stuff on credit cards if they couldn't do it on the other stuff. And
Yeah. Yeah.
you know that your readers or your listeners have to know that that can't go on forever. All
Not at
right,
all.
you're getting
Yep.
into yourself in a big hole if you do
Clean up
that.
your depths.
But we didn't have any debt,
That's good.
personal debt,
Mm-hmm.
other than our house,
Okay.
and so I leased a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Jeep Cherokee, real nice looking red Jeep Cherokee. So
Okay.
that was
Okay.
kind of fun to drive too.
All right.
I I got a cell phone, and I bought a computer and a printer.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much it. And then I was paying
Bare
my
minimum.
friend
Mm-hmm.
a few $100s a month to share his office that was in Tampa.
Okay.
And so I would drive to Tampa every day and do my work, and then drive back home. It was about an hour each way. I lived in Imperial Lakes, which is a subdivision of Mulberry.
Uh huh.
And I did that for the first year of
Okay.
running the business.
That's.
But I didn't have much cash saved. What I did have was, when I quit Bromwell and Carrier,
Mm-hmm.
I had about a month's worth of, maybe a month and a half worth of vacation that I'd saved up. And
Okay.
so
So
I didn't have to pay myself.
for the first month
They
and a
were
half. Okay.
they paid the check. They paid the check for the
Mm.
first month or month and a half,
Okay.
and that was my cash flow.
Okay. Okay.
Uh,
That's really cool. Okay. So I guess let me pull this through again. So when you leave your company, right? Did you have like a project kind of pipeline that you're gonna get? Like you're gonna feed you for that 1 year. You already get the clients, figure it out. You already taken the contract, or did you just kind of okay? I need to leave now. I'm starting my data engineering tomorrow, and then you left. Was that part of the
So
process or?
I I purposefully didn't want to do anything unethical at the company that I was at, so I didn't
Okay.
pursue any work until I left. but I had
Wow.
talked to my
Okay.
friend, and
Uh-huh.
I was reasonably certain that
Uh-huh.
he was going to hire me to do the geotechnical for his project.
Okay.
So I was pretty sure I had a job,
Okay.
and then the other one came very quickly after that, and then another one, and pretty soon. So in answer to your question, what happened that first year?
Uh-huh.
Actually matched the salary that I had at Bromwell and Carrier.
Wow.
Um,
Okay, that's pretty good. I
the,
mean, that's
that was amazing. That
yeah.
was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I even got to take a vacation for Christmas because nobody was working anyway. So I said, well,
There you go. Okay.
might as well go and visit the grandparents and so forth. And so our kids were at their grandparents, my in-laws,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then came back and at the beginning of the year started working again hard, and
Okay.
it just kind of kept going. Now the second year
Uh-huh.
was the hardest. I
Okay.
ended up, let me see, about $7,000 less income the second year,
Hmm.
and that was a little dicey because we just didn't have a whole lot.
Yeah, I
But
mean that's uh-huh.
by the third year, I made more than I had ever made before in my career,
Wow,
and it
okay.
it kept going up.
Kept
It
going up.
kept going up
Okay.
from there.
Okay, so that's really cool. Okay, so you have some downs and ups, right, and stuff like that. And again, for some listeners, you're still about at the age of 30, right? I mean, 31, 32, possibly when you start all this.
I
How
started at age 32.
Wow. Okay. So, how do you? I guess in such an industry where age or experience is the number one thing that people want to see, right? I mean, some people want to talk with you if you're not have white hair or something like that. But how do you? I guess tell your clients that hey, I can do this too, and I can do it better than the existing clients that they're already using. So how did you persuade them to do that?
Well, that's exactly what I told them. We can do it better than they can, and we can do it cheaper than they can.
Okay. Okay.
They, they didn't always believe me though.
For sure. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that's the fact.
Uh huh.
I had a couple of clients that said you may be less expensive, but we need somebody with more experience.
Yeah, I mean
So that
that's.
did happen.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to remember that on the resume, when I was working with Bromwell and Carrier,
Mm-hmm.
I had actually worked on the Veterans Expressway for 4 years when that
Wow.
project
Okay.
was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't just one of the designers. They were actually working with HNTB at the GEC level. That's the General
Okay.
Engineering Consultants.
So they're up there.
So
Mm-hmm.
in my position, I was reviewing all of the sections of the geotechnical and reports that were being generated for each of the 3 to 4 mile sections of a 21-mile highway toll facility.
Oh wow.
So
Okay. Okay.
again, I got all kinds of experience at a very high level early on in my career. I
That's
mean,
amazing. Okay.
yeah. So when I would talk to people, I would tell them, "Hey, I worked on the Veterans Expressway. I
Mm-hmm.
worked on the Polk Parkway.
Mm-hmm.
These are multi-million-dollar projects. I can certainly do your $10,000 project."
Yeah,
So,
I like that. So
um,
you're
yeah,
marketing in a way that you've done this before, and then you're gonna perform with the same manner you did before, just under a different umbrella, right? No, I like it.
exactly,
That's really cool. Okay.
exactly. The other thing, William, I would say that at the beginning of the company, I did sign up to be a DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, and of
Okay.
course
Okay.
that's the main program that the DOT has for small businesses and minority and women-owned businesses. I come from a Hispanic family
Okay.
with a name like Madrid. You might have figured that out,
Might never
but
expect.
yeah. So I signed up for that, and I did get a couple of projects early on
Mm-hmm.
as a result of being a DBE. But I just couldn't, and we were so small. I by then my first employee was a draftsman
Okay.
to draft up the plans that we were going to submit for those borrow pits. My second employee was an engineering technician. Actually, was an engineering student
Wow.
at
Okay.
USF,
Mm-hmm.
and I just had him be a technician for me, and he would help me write reports and help me do lab tests and help me to do whatever the entry level type stuff was, and then I signed and sealed the reports. I did some things that I don't do now.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of environmental permitting
Okay.
at the beginning. When you first start, you kind of need as much revenue as you can, and you can't be real picky about it.
Anything can take off,
So,
basically, right?
so the projects that I was selecting, that I was doing, what weren't necessarily what I would do now, but I
Mm.
was doing environmental permitting,
Okay.
and realizing that's something that you have to be at every single day to be really good at, because
Mm-hmm.
they change the rules on you
Yeah.
when you're not looking, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Anytime. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Okay. So we talk about, like all the good things, like a lot of the accomplishments that you did. Did that have any downturns in your company? I remember you said your company was a big sinkhole specialist when you were doing it, and you're making a lot of money out of it. And, and as you all know, the governor kind of changed the whole situation with the sinkhole. How did it went for you? Was it, did you manage it, or how did you have to lay off some people, or how did it go with you?
yeah. So we were doing a lot of general geotechnical engineering. We did a few DOT projects, but
Mm-hmm.
then I kind of quit doing that. But we started doing local projects,
Mm-hmm.
and we would occasionally get a bigger project than a lot of small projects. Um, Along the way, we did sign up to be an 8A company.
Mm-hmm.
The SBA, Small Business Administration,
Mm-hmm.
has a program called the 8A Set Aside, and it's for federal government contracts. And you can negotiate, if you're an 8A certified firm, you can negotiate with the government on the price, and um, they're not you don't have to compete with companies that are 100 times the size of you,
I,
right?
I like that. I
Because
like
a
that
lot
word
of
I put on. Mm-hmm.
lot of federal work is massive companies like Raytheon,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Every
stuff
single
like
one.
that.
Mm-hmm.
This was a set aside project that was only for other 8A firms,
Mm-hmm.
and so we ended up actually building a building on MacDill Air Force Base. It was a satellite communications building,
Mm-hmm.
and the budget was $1.2 million. We were in the middle of that project when 911 happened,
Wow. Okay.
September 11th, 2001.
Uh huh.
And from that time on to finish the project, it took an hour and a half to go through the security at the front gate to
Mm-hmm.
get onto the site. It took an
Okay.
hour to get off of the site every day.
Wow.
So and that's for everybody. I mean, literally, we would have the cement, the concrete supplier, like we were pouring a concrete pad for either the building or the sidewalk around it, the outside or something,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd be over there, and that thing would be turning, and they'd be having to wait in line for an hour and a half. Meanwhile, the concrete's about to set.
Okay.
So it was dicey in some cases
Mm.
of working that project, and
Okay.
ultimately, we assumed some things wrong
Uh huh.
in the bid,
Mm-hmm.
and they were very hard nosed about some other things. And 911 happened. When all three of those
Wow.
things happened, all kind of at the same time,
Uh huh.
we started losing money on that project. And at the end of the
Man.
project,
Okay.
it's amazing that we didn't go out of business.
Wow.
I think
Okay.
it's kind of a modern day miracle. We were losing $10,000 a week on that project.
Wow. That's
Meanwhile, the
crazy.
company was making $10,000 a week
Okay.
of profit
Wow.
on our
Okay.
simple work.
Mm-hmm.
So it was cash flowing the project. So for months,
Mm-hmm.
I was losing money, making money, losing money, making money, but cash flowing. But at the end of the project, I owed my subcontractors $90,000, and I didn't have the money to pay them.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's
So I
crazy.
wrote I wrote them all a letter,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, if you guys don't sue me,
Mm-hmm.
I do have a part of the company that is making money, and I will pay you within the year. And
Wow.
nobody
Okay.
sued us.
Mm-hmm.
I paid them off.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't go out of business. We didn't declare bankruptcy, and
That's amazing. Mm-hmm.
yeah, we actually lost $300,000 on that one project. It
Holy
should have put us out
cow.
of business, but
Wow. Okay.
again, I say hand to God,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
mean,
Wow. Okay.
things
So,
like that don't just happen. In my way of thinking.
no, I agree. So, like you've been up and there, right? You've been the ups and down. You make a lot of money the first couple of years, and then you lost a lot of money, obviously, in some of the projects too. And so, with all this pressure building up on you, how do you convince yourself to become, really positive, right? You just keep moving on and just, like, how do you know there's an end goal for all this, right? I mean, it's what keeps you sane, like, every day. Have you ever
Maybe I'm insane.
have you ever think of going back or at all? Have you regret taking this path?
No, I really haven't ever thought of that. I feel like this was the path I was supposed to be on.
Okay.
There have been so many positive things. I've gotten to work with some great people,
Okay.
and the adventure continues today. I mean, there's so many positive things going on. In
Okay.
spite of the coronavirus, there are opportunities, and I think that if you look for opportunity, you find opportunity. If you're not looking for it, sometimes it'll be right staring you right in the face, and you'll just miss it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm naturally an optimistic person.
I can tell.
I get up in the morning, and I'm happy generally.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Um, and I think that helps. But also when you're in the um, going through the throes of you have to have a layoff. We didn't have a layoff until my 20th year in business.
Okay.
I think it was actually 19 years. I almost made 20 years with no layoffs. Now I had to fire some
Wow.
people.
Okay.
I
Okay.
had to reassign some people.
Mm-hmm.
I had some people quit, but I had never laid off anybody. But
That's really great.
we
Mm-hmm.
did have a time when the sinkhole work that we were doing, we had become one of the top sinkhole specialists in the state of Florida,
Mm-hmm.
but the state changed the rules, made it much harder for a homeowner to file a claim for
Yep. Yep.
sinkhole activity.
Almost
And
impossible. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's much harder now than what it was. It
I
was, in
agree.
fact, it was too easy for them to
Back
do
in the
that
days.
back in the day.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, and so that was inevitable. It was going to happen, but nobody knew when. And
Mm.
when it did, it happened like
A
it
day.
just
Yeah.
dropped.
Okay.
And so all of a sudden, I had at that time 60 employees, and we didn't have
Wow.
work for that many. So I did have to have a layoff where we went
Wow.
from 60 down to 40, and that was
That
like
must be really
killing me.
hard. Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, it
Mm-hmm.
was it was very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had to have another one go from 40 to 30, and we've been kind of battling our way back since then.
Wow.
Um,
Okay. That's
so
must be
what
really
that
tough.
caused us to have to do is kind of reinvent the company.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a positive attitude, you take that as a challenge, and you say, "Hey, what can we do today to be better than what we were yesterday? What can we do to
Okay.
really challenge ourselves to meet the needs of a wholly new set of clients?
Okay.
What do they need? You have to ask yourself, what do they need that I can provide?"
Okay. Okay. Well, that's really interesting, Larry. So, like you have all this experience nowadays, right? Through the layoff, through the good times. So if you ever have to tell, young Larry back in the days, maybe when he started his own company, or maybe young Larry when he was just starting in, your own company, what would really you want to tell yourself? Like, is there anything you want to do differently, or
Well, I know I've already admitted that I was pretty naive, but I don't know that really worked against me. I think
seems like it worked out.
in a way it kind of worked for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? I would say what happened to us as a sinkhole specialist was that we got into a niche where there was a high need.
Okay.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and it was to the point, William, that we didn't even have to ask our clients for work. They would just fax over
Oh,
or
okay.
email
Uh-huh.
assignments to us, and we would get one or two of these things a day.
Wow.
um,
Okay. That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
we were doing 40 sinkhole investigations a month all over the state of Florida.
Dang.
And
Okay.
so I think maybe when you get in that niche,
Mm-hmm.
you really should be thinking about, this is great. We're making a lot of money. We're
Mm-hmm.
doing fantastic. Everybody's busy, and it's easy to get that work. But
Yeah.
what should I be doing to prepare for? when that goes away.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably should have diversified a little bit more.
Okay.
I probably should have insisted that we try to spend more time going after municipal work and private work
Mm-hmm.
and DOT work.
Okay.
So after the sinkhole work kind of caved in on us,
Mm-hmm.
that's a pun. Um, After the
I like
sinkhole
that.
work collapsed on us,
Collapse
we
on us.
had
Yep.
to figure out where where our new clients were going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I did was I kind of looked around the industry and I said, what do all the big boys do? What are they doing?
Okay.
And and what should I do? And one of the things was common was that all of the big geotechnical companies had their own drill rigs in house.
Okay.
So we had a fleet of drill rigs, but they were little tiny drill rigs that could go into people's
Yeah.
backyards
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
drill for sinkholes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
they were on tracks so that they wouldn't tear up somebody's backyard. It kind of spread out the load a little bit.
So
Well,
they're kind of lightweight kind of thing.
yeah, to do the DOT work, we needed to have big truck mounted rigs
Mm-hmm.
and a much wider and diversified um, equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So we began to sell off some of the smaller drill rigs and buy bigger rigs and change that out. So that was part of the things that we did. But I think just in general, we were too niche.
Mm-hmm.
And if that falls through, then what is your backup plan? You need to be thinking about what your backup plan is. Now, one of the moves that we just recently did was to diversify further
Mm-hmm.
by doing a merger with CPWG, which
Okay.
is a civil engineering company that was based out of Tampa, offices in Oviedo, and you mentioned some
Wow.
of the other
Yeah.
offices
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
the state.
Okay. That's really cool.
So when we did that, now we're not just doing geotechnical. We're not just doing construction inspection.
Mm-hmm.
We have a survey group.
Mm-hmm.
We have a landscape architecture group. We have a general civil group that we
Wow.
can do
Okay.
all kinds of different areas of civil.
Mm-hmm.
And we're a DBE and we're an MBE. So, I have taken that lesson of being too selective, and diversification is a very good thing for a company. You don't want to go outside of the area where you can really focus. And you don't want to go too far out to where you're doing stuff that you don't have an expertise at.
Mm-hmm.
In our line of work, expertise is what we sell, right?
Yeah.
So
Service you're
you've
selling.
got to, but find people that do know how to do that.
Okay. I really like that, Larry. You brought a really good topic here. Sometimes early in the age, we're used to this mindset where, you're given a task, you're supposed to do this, and you're done, right? Once you complete the project, you're really focused on that task. But once you're going to that whole entrepreneurship mindset process, you got to have a goal in mind, right? You got to have a strategic plan in mind that if something does happen, what's my
Yes.
backup plan, right? You can't just figure out that things going to work forever. You got to constantly keep thinking yourself. So it's really important, for the listeners up there, you want to start your own business and stuff like that. Make sure you have that, a backup plan if something does happen, and make sure you re-strategize yourself, when bad times do happen.
So I would say for our crowd today, especially, you think about it this way: there is an engineering mindset. We live to solve problems. The more technical, the better. I mean, some of us just love finding that wonderful solution, and I certainly consider myself that. I'm more of the engineering mindset than I am a business mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and I have been throughout my career, but that has not served me well. I think we could have been a bigger company earlier. I think we could have been even more successful had I been more strategic about the company. And
Okay.
so the business mindset is really about strategy. Where are you in the marketplace? How can you dominate a market? How can you expand a market? How can you add more services? How can you increase your profitability? And so forth. That's not the only thing that to think about, in my opinion. And in fact, I had a friend of mine who was very much of a businessman,
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, Larry, the only reason to start a business is so that you can sell it later on. And I was like, yeah, I don't agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, well, what else is there? And I said, well, there's developing people, there's working with people,
Mm-hmm.
there's gaining a reputation with your clients. These are important things to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Be able to solve problems. And he goes, well, you're thinking like an engineer. You're not thinking like a businessman. A business person says, how can I take my dollars and maximize my dollars
Mm-hmm.
so that in the end I don't have to work? And that's kind of what his mindset is. So,
Okay.
and if you're honest with yourself, you have to say, I really need to have a little bit of that mindset, but also maybe let's talk about that people aspect. That's a huge part of
Yeah,
who
yeah.
we are and what we do, and those people are very important to us. And so, how can we run a company that has that mindset that we're profit minded, but we're also people minded?
I really like that, Larry. Some people even say this, right? Engineering used to be a noble profession, right? We built civilization, right? We built, places for people to live. And, part of my inspiration when it was, naive and young William was to create something, big and just to help people in mind and
Yeah,
really to have that balance of mindset with the business and the goal itself. And it's really okay to have that. You don't always have to focus on money, 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 and then, all the other stuff, but it's really good to have that goal. I really like it. And
thank you.
so with that said, Larry, we're going almost to the end of the session here. So how is it going with you now? So what's next for you? What's the future for you? I know you mentioned you started a lot of venture firm after this. How's it going for that? And then, like what's your plan?
So yeah, well, over the years, William, we didn't really have a whole lot of time to talk about it, but I have actually started several other companies.
Wow. Okay.
And I started another engineering company that became a competitor. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. I started a company called
Wow.
Greenovative Design and Engineering
Okay.
in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
That was an environmental company, energy efficiency type of company. This building that I'm in here, my wife and I built to house Madrid Engineering Group, and it's super energy efficient. It's actually qualifies as a LEED Silver type building.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a LEED compliant building.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot through that process. And what came out of that was another company called Green Star Panels,
Mm-hmm.
another company called Greenovative Homes. We actually bought houses that had been, when the downturn happened in 2008, 2009,
Uh-huh.
we would buy these houses, inexpensive houses. We would renovate them. Actually, we would greenovate them, and then
I like
we
that.
would
I like that.
sell them at a higher price.
Wow. Okay.
So we did that for a few years, and it became less and less profitable, so we stopped.
Okay.
But the most recent move is to diversify and to grow the company. And so Madrid CPWG is what we call our new company.
Uh-huh.
I had 45 employees. CPWG had about 55 employees when we merged.
That's awesome.
So we got over 100 employees. We got to have about 110 employees now.
Okay.
We have an office in Branson, Missouri.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
We have an office in Arkansas. We have, there's just some really great opportunities that are coming from that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the companies that CPWG had is called Pavement Management Group,
Mm-hmm.
and I've personally taken a strong interest in researching a technology called Consolid.
Okay.
And
What's that
this
about?
is two chemicals
Mm-hmm.
that you mix in with the road base,
Okay.
and it strengthens the road base and it makes it hydrophobic.
Mm-hmm.
So hydrophobic is the real interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
If water can't get in and water can't get out of your road base,
Mm-hmm.
you're always at the optimum moisture content, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So,
that's the
so
theory.
the performance should theoretically be the optimum performance of that road base. The road should last a lot longer, and in fact, that's what the history of this company is. So Madrid Engineering is considered the technical advisor for the United States for Consolid, and
Wow.
I
Okay.
actually have some of the materials over here that I wanted to show the
Oh,
guys. This is
that's really cool. Okay.
this is solid dry. It's a powder
Mm-hmm.
and very, very fine, and it looks like cement.
Okay.
I ought to tell you something, right?
Yeah.
It actually does cement the soil together. This is called Consolid 444. It's a liquid polymer.
Mm-hmm.
When you mix this in with the water that you're going to use to moisturize and prep and get to that optimum moisture content in your soil,
Mm-hmm.
when you mix this in, it actually changes the polarity at a molecular level. So this is a nanotechnology, and
Wow.
and
Okay.
that's what helps to repel the water from the sample. So
Okay.
I have a kind of heavy. I have a soil sample here. This is actually a sample of sand
Wow. Okay.
that has
I thought it was
been
rock. Okay.
no, it's partially cemented by the consolid. We mix the consolid materials in at 1%, just 1%,
Uh huh.
and it looks and acts more like a sandstone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as hard as concrete, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's much harder than most stiff clay or dense sand.
Mm-hmm.
Much harder than that. So if you can do that with those materials, that's pretty exciting. But when we really started to research this, we found that it worked really well with lime rock as
Okay.
well.
So
It's
you can do
highly
your
reactive to
replacement.
lime rock,
Okay.
so you can add a smaller percentage and get tremendous strengths from this. So the research that we've done has included some field demonstrations and laboratory work, and
Wow.
we're
Okay.
ready to really roll it out and talk to people at the DOT
Uh
and the
huh.
counties and see if we can't start using this in Florida as a resilient road.
Wow. Okay. That's really amazing, Larry. I really love the passion of yours. That's really why I brought you in here. It seems like you just never lost it, right? I mean, the passion. When I was a kid, I really want to become a pilot, right? I mean, that passion there brought me who I am today, and it seems like you just never lost it, right? Despite being really busy with life, being having things with your firm, and you're still passionate in engineering, and that's really what I think. One of the most successful trait of an entrepreneurship, just like you. And so, really, one last question of the day. I like to bring up like the podcast NPR, on a scale of 1 to 10. So, how much do you count all the success you have by luck, and how much do you count this, by talent or hard work, or maybe the people beside you?
Well, so I really don't believe in luck. I
Okay.
think
All right. All right.
there's a divine hand that guides us,
I like it.
and
I like it.
that's kind of the way that I see it.
Uh huh.
Um, Between hard work and talent
Mm-hmm.
is an interesting question. Are people born as an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
You might say that I was because my dad, my brother, my other brother, we all had our own businesses. I certainly wasn't intending to be an entrepreneur,
Uh huh.
but it did happen. So maybe there's something in the genes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I came from a family that had real good communication skills, and I think that's really helped me.
Okay.
So maybe that's in the genes and a little bit of learning about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the majority of this, and I don't know what percentage it is, but
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it is being resilient yourself,
Okay.
being confident in your ability to do things, but also some days you don't feel like getting up and running a company. So you really have to kind of steel yourself
Yeah.
and just have a lot of grit
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
determination to go out there and make it happen. And I think you do create your own opportunities a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Some just fall in your lap,
I agree.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of it is created by your efforts.
I like that. I like that really. A lot of this hard work, pays off one day, and sometimes it just takes that extra resilience to just keep on, going forward every single day, and just to have that positive mindset. Maybe surround yourself with the positive people around you and stuff like that. And that's why we're here, right? We're the American
Yes.
Society of Civil Engineers. We try to encourage other people to join in, and share the positivity. We've been there, we've done that, and we just want to tell you that you're not alone in this journey. And so, with that said, that kind of ends up our interview for the day. And it's been a really wonderful hour session with you, Larry. I really want to open up to some questions. If anyone want to open up here in the question
Sure.
chat, you can feel free to pop it up, and then I can tell it out to Larry, and then we'll probably spend 5 minutes or so doing other stuff. So. So George Lebo said, "Thanks, Larry and William. I appreciate the time you spent preparing and presenting, and thank you. We really enjoy you having here in our channel." And Connie said the same
Appreciate
thing.
that.
It was a great idea. I really love it. Having Larry here is awesome. Kyle said the same thing. Elias said the same thing. Thank you. It's we're trying to help people here and then all that. So
William, I think you did a really good job of interviewing too.
thank you, thank you. I
So
appreciate it.
kudos.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for agreeing on this show. Actually, it's amazing. While we're waiting for the question for some people, the first time I called Larry, he was busy asking doing some phone call, and about a half an hour later, about 6 o'clock, he called me back, and this was something that I don't get too much often. People don't often call back, but Larry called me back and decided to do so. Oh wait, we have one question of the day. So Caitlin Hems,
Okay.
sorry if I can't pronounce your name. Thank you, much appreciated. Her question was, did you find that you work more hours as an owner than a worker? What do you think, Larry?
Yeah,
That's a
so
tough
that's a
question.
great question.
Uh-huh.
There's kind of a thing out there that, do you own your company or does your company own you?
Yep.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And if and there have been times when I've had to put in the 60-hour weeks, maybe even 70-hour weeks,
Mm-hmm.
but I have really worked hard to have a work-life balance.
Okay.
And I think, I value my family. My three boys, by the way, two of them turned out to be engineers. One's a chemical
Yay.
engineer, one's
Okay.
a civil engineer, geotech, actually, in California.
Mm-hmm.
And then my youngest runs. He's a manager of a hotel. I'm really proud of them, and I think if you're going to have a family, being a husband takes work.
Mm-hmm.
Being a good dad takes work and takes effort, and it takes time.
Okay.
And so I've tried very hard to not put in heavy hours.
Okay.
When I was at the end of my time at Bromwell and Carrier,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that happened was I was involved in so many projects and working so much
Mm-hmm.
that I was kind of exhausted.
What's your average
And
hour, Larry?
yeah,
It's to put it
I
into
was working
perspective.
60 hours a week over there.
Wow. Okay. So that was your
Now I'm
job. Mm-hmm.
working. Now I work probably about 45 hours a week.
Okay.
Sometimes more, sometimes less.
Uh-huh.
But it's generally 45 to 50 hours a week.
Okay. I like that, and a lot of people probably heard this too on the COVID-19 talk that despite all this, you gotta kind of set down like a stepping stone that this is work, this is life, and this is how you should balance yourself. Otherwise, no matter if you spend 120 of hours a week, some people are just not meant to work that much, and you might get burnt out and you might not even be that
Right.
productive. And
For
so that was
sure.
good. Okay. So second question, it was from Elias. He was our past president for the ASCE. His question
Okay.
was, what general legal steps are needed to get the ball rolling with starting a company? I guess at least here's in Florida. And I'll put something onto this. Larry did put up a really good point. If you're a minority, getting your DBE is a really good, stepping start because, a lot of projects, especially in DOT, they would at least require 10, 20% of the firm to be DBE. Getting your certification with the DOT getting rolling too, that's probably one of the majority. What do you think, Larry?
Well, that's some additional paperwork that not every company has, but every company has to sign up with the Department of Professional Regulations.
Hmm.
You have to sign up. You have to register your company with the state of Florida
Mm-hmm.
as a valid company.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an engineering company, you have to have the engineering license. If you are a surveying company, you have to have a surveying license.
Okay.
So you have your own personal license, but you have the company's license as well.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a occupational license for the town that you are in. And so
Wow. Okay.
this office here is in Bartow.
Mm-hmm.
We have an occupational license for the city of Bartow. We have
Mm-hmm.
another one for the county that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
For each office, we have to have each of those. There's actually some checklists that you can look up online.
Okay.
I think it's probably easier now than when it was when I was there because there's so much more on the internet that's
I agree.
available.
Yeah.
But you can say, I want to start an engineering company in Florida. What
Mhm.
steps do I take? There's probably a whole list of that kind of stuff.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. And
Good
you know,
question.
I mentioned this as much too. We at the ASCE, we do our mentorship program where we match you with, people like you, CEOs, project managers who've done this. It's probably going to help you out as well too. So, maybe get a mentors who done it before, and then maybe they can help you out. Obviously, they can't, tell you
Yeah.
one by one what are steps to do, but having that person to help you out will really help you out throughout the way.
And I think this type of podcast is probably going to be very helpful to some people that want to start their own companies.
Hmm.
So I applaud you for thinking about it, and
Thank you. Thank you.
those that are out there that are thinking about starting a company, I wish you the best luck. I called it luck
Yeah.
there. I shouldn't have.
Best skills, yeah. So I think with that said, I think we're probably gonna close it up, and I don't see that much questions anymore. Thank you everyone for watching here today, and I hope during this pandemic or coronavirus kind of thing, you keep on staying positive because
Please
we're
do.
gonna get this through together. At the end of the day, it's just like any other catastrophe we have, and to get strong together and then just to share the positivity with others is probably the best thing you could ever done. And so yeah,
Stay
so stay
strong and be
positive,
safe.
stay safe, and thank you everyone.
All right. Thank you, William.
Yep, thank you, Larry. Let me close down the stream.